So welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander, and today we're taking a look at Field Commander Napoleon. And this is from Danvers and Games, and this isn't a new game by any means. This is one of their older games. It's a few years old. It's not like super duper old or anything. You can still pick this up readily. I've had this game for probably 6 or 7 months now. I picked it up at Gen Con 2017, and shamefully it sat on my shelf for a long time. I'd heard really good things about it, that it was just a really good Napoleonic game, a good solitaire game, and just a well done strategic level game. So I'd heard glowing things about it. There's a few other games in this series. I think there's Field Commander Rommel, also extremely well reviewed. That people hold that one in very high regard. And I think they did. I think it's Field Commander Alexander as well. And then I think they did a Fleet Commander Nimitz. And I think I don't know if it's a similar style or anything, but no, they do a lot of these types of games where it's solitaire strategic level, moving bits around, trying to fulfill larger grand campaigns. And that's exactly what this game is. You can kind of see here, and I'll show you here in a bit, we have a big strategic level campaign board where you'll move big stacks of formations, and then those are resolved when you come into contact with enemy. You move to this individual battle board where there's different regions, and it's literally between column and line, moving your forces, shooting cannons, and killing each other on the battlefield. After which you then go back to this board, move them around a bit more, all those kind of things. So it gives you a lot of different feels all in one game. You can get the grand strategy type of thing where it's like, my goodness, I'm going to lose these big things. You've got supply kind of to worry about in a very minimal way. And you're trying to fulfill objectives, campaign objectives on this board. But you fight the individual tactical battles here, and that gives you a much more personal level in that game, and battles become very memorable, which I think is really, really neat, because you'll do quite a few throughout the course of a campaign. Now, just a few different things. I don't like it. That's the wrong word. It's not that I don't like Napoleonic games. It's that frankly I don't care. It's just not a big theme that I'm like super excited about. I'll play a Napoleonic game. I think I've played some of the ones from Victory Point Games, like they did 100 Days 20, which had two games in one. That was neat. But there's a lot of Napoleonic era games that I just haven't even touched, haven't even played. It's just not necessarily my main focus of interest. But I had heard this one was so good, and it was a solo game, and there was so much in the box that I was like, well, if I'm going to play one, I'll play this one. So I picked it up, and it's really, really, it's very good. It is, I can see why people love it as much as they do, especially for those who might not be, like myself, super into Napoleonic wargaming. This is a really good way to do it. It's not overly complex in any way. You've got stacks of units, and you'll move them around a campaign board, which is just area control, basically. It's not overly complex. There's not a ton of different terrain things. It's different locations, different cities on the map, and you'll move your stacks and move Napoleon around to command stacks and things like that. You'll capture objective cities. Those cities might have fortifications and garrisons in them on top of mobile troops, and then you fight them out, and then it's done, and you move on. The tactical combat's really cool, very unique. We'll take a look at that here in a bit. But you have each of the playing pieces. We'll just briefly show you. They're these kind of longer pieces, almost the width of 2 normal counters. And on the tactical board, they're either line or column. You literally will turn them like that. We'll take a look here, but it's very simple way of doing quite complex military maneuvers. You can kind of do that on the board, and it's charging your cavalry in, doing they charge, they'll rout units before you even open fire on them, and then moving into line troops, shooting cannons across. It's great fun. I had a really good time doing it. This game, and if you watch the unboxing, there's a ton of stuff in there. I frankly had no idea what I was looking at when I opened it, but reading the rules, which are very easy to pick up, there's, gosh, now I'm going to say it wrong. There's a ton of campaigns in here, and each campaign has its own mounted map board. You'll use, this is a generic tactical board, but you'll have a bunch of different campaign boards, so you just pull out the one you want to do. On the board itself, there is a setup of all the special things that you need and where to put the troops, and then there's some kind of enemy AI printed on the board, so it's different for each campaign now, the way that different commanders reacted differently to various invasions and campaigns. You know, so the AI varies within a set of bounds, and then there's kind of supply and a little sequence of play on the board. So you don't need a lot out, and it's very easy to play, easy to learn to play. So that's something that's a big plus for me. I didn't have to spend a ton of time picking this up. Again, and the replayability is through the roof. There's so many campaigns. Some boards, so this is the very first campaign. This board has actually 2 different campaigns. So you'll play through once, and then there's a whole different campaign. And the campaigns feel very different. Essentially the mechanics are the same thing, right? So you're moving across trying to capture various areas or do certain things. But the campaigns change entirely based on the things that you have to fight with, the enemies you fight against, their organization, the things that they're trying to do. So very, very different feel for each campaign based on the constraints that you're put under, what forces are at your disposal. So that's really, really cool. This is a blast playing this. There's a little track, you're basically trying to do better than Napoleon did. If you do worse than Napoleon did, you fail. If you do kind of the same historical outcome, that's also good. But it's a neat concept. I was very pleased with how it played. Didn't feel bogged down in any way. And that's it. It's really, really, this is a cool game. So what I'll do is we'll kind of show you all the different things and at least some of how everything works. And then we'll come back and I'll give you some little final thoughts, maybe some comparisons to other solo games that I've played. So here's a look at kind of the basic setup. It's kind of awkward. I couldn't really fit everything in the camera shot just because it's different shaped boards and there's a player aid that you'll need as well. But it doesn't take up much space. This is kind of basically what you've got. So you've got this strategic board, and first off, I love the board. I think this old map style that's kind of hand-drawn looking is really good. I love the aesthetic of that, and the counters are really nice. We'll take a look at those in a second, but this is a great looking board. If I'm going to stare at a board for a few hours whilst I play through a full campaign, I want it to look nice. Yeah, this is great. Brings a little bit of theme coming out. Here you've got the tactical board, and this is it's kind of a green field. You've got some trees and little villages, but all of that it's frankly just fluff. Really, you're just doing these approaches in these different zones, and you just move your troops forward, and the enemy's troops are going to come forward, and they clash, and they shoot each other, and get into melee, and everyone dies. But that's, it's a somewhat abstract, but when you're playing it, it looks like it's real line combat, which is really cool. I had a gut time. We'll take a look at that here in a second. So, as you can see, you've got... this is kind of I just set it up as the middle of the campaign, just so you could kind of see a progression of what it might look like. You've got... This is the setup for the 1796 campaign, and this board also does the 1800 campaign. And this is kind of northern Italy and a little bit of Australia, Austria, come on now. And basically, it'll tell you in the setup all the different victory conditions. These cities that are marked with an objective token here, those are the ones that you're trying to capture. And if you can capture X amount by the end of the campaign, that's when you're going to have victory. It lists all the forces you need, which are all named. And here's the one thing I really, really appreciated in this game, is that every playing piece that you will use in this campaign has the campaign number on it. They all say 1796 on them. So when you punch this, and this comes with
it felt like just a billion different boards. I think there was at least 6 counter sheets, and there may have been more, but it was 6 counter sheets, and a lot of it's all the same looking. So this is a really good way to organize it. So all I have is, and I'll show you real quick, all of the different campaigns I have individually bagged. So every playing piece from the 1813 campaign, got it in here. 1814 campaign, got it in here. 1809, you get the idea. That's just a really thoughtful way to kind of package a game that is as big as this is. And I love that there's units which are reprinted in each campaign. Like there's a Napoleon for each campaign. You can just bag them all individually, so that when you say, boop, I want to play the 1800 campaign, I just pick up the 1800 bag, everything's in there all ready to go. And I love that it's not kind of generic and organized just by name that you have to leaf through everything. You don't have to do that. Thought that was really cool. Thank you very much, Dan Verson. Extremely thoughtful of you. Made setup really easy, because I just had a bag of pieces, and you just say, French pieces go here and here, and then it was Habsburg pieces kind of go here and here, and then the Piedmont pieces kind of will go, oh wait, where did those guys go? They were all down at here, in Savona. They all died, that's why there's not on the board. But set up really easy. Like you can see there's just areas on the board. You kind of divide your stacks up on your turn, move a stack here, move a stack here, resolve combats. It's very, very simple. The movement isn't kind of overly complex. So you're just moving on the board, trying to capture these cities. You do all your stuff and resolve combats, and then the enemy is going to do stuff. And then we'll get there in a second, because it's very, very interesting. But basically, in a lot of the scenarios, you're trying to capture X amount of objectives or kill things by a certain turn. If you do it, by this one in February 1797, you achieved your victory earlier than Napoleon did. You'll gain more victory points for the campaign. There's a historical outcome, and anything after that is an inferior outcome, and it's basically considered a defeat, so not good. The AI is printed on the board, which is really nice. This is extremely simple AI, and what I mean by that is that it's not dumb or really easy, or like it's not like unintuitive or kind of silly. It's just a very simple to implement AI. And it's as simple as chuck a dice. If they have any amount of supply, the enemy will spend their supply to improve this die roll. In which case, they'll do a different action, usually a better action. The higher numbers are usually much better for them. So very simple to do in that way. But when the AI moves, they might have a big old stack, and a lot of the scenarios where they start, you get this huge stack over here in Klagenfurt when they arrive on the board. What you do is you just randomly divide the stack into piles of 3, and you roll for each one. So these guys, boop, number 8. So this stack, they're going to go to the nearest French-held objective. Well, nearest French-held objective, let's say it's in Milan. They're simply just going to move, boop, until Lonato get closer. Then this stack here, they rolled a 9. It was the same thing. So they're going to join up. And then this stack over here, they rolled a 10. And they're going to advance, which is actually ironically the same thing. Oh, well, they were in Klagenfurt, so they would move here as well. And these guys would move to the nearest closest force. So let's say if there was some French guys down here, they would move towards the nearest force, and you could decide which way you went. But if they were here, they would go this way. And it's just, it's very simple. They divide the stack so you don't necessarily get overwhelmed, although it can happen if you roll the same number over and over. And they'll just advance across the board towards you or towards objectives. So that way, and here's what was interesting, I found myself, I committed early to taking out the big Piedmont force. And I also took Turin as well, very early in my first ever campaign, and I left them kind of exposed. They had like one half dude there defending, and the troops from Genoa, some of them rolled. They rolled really well, and it was French-held objective ×2. So they would move towards the nearest French-held objective that was the easiest or most likely defended. So they literally went boop into Marengo and boop into Turin. I had to fight a counterattack that was absolutely crushing. And that's another thing I wanted to get to. This game is not easy. At least it's not a cakewalk. Is that a real phrase? I don't know. But a cake run. Is that what it's called? Whatever. Either way, this gave you really good strategic decision making, and I thought that was so cool. And I love a simple AI that can do that. Another game that I feel does that is the solo module for 65. Entirely different game. It's a Vietnam tactical war game, but the decision making is very simple to implement, but it's really hard to combat sometimes, and it puts you in really interesting, sometimes very compromising positions. So this, I'm really happy with the AI. Again, very simple to learn, and I think you'll do really well picking it up. So let's go this way. So to fight a combat, what you'll end up doing, let's get a snack of these guys, and let's say they've got these just for fun, and they'll be attacked by some Habsburg, some Austrians. Alright, so there's a few different types of pieces. You basically, for your mobile troops, I'll take a look, get these organized. Alright, so you have regular line infantry, you have cavalry, and that's pretty much it as far as mobile units go. There are some cannons, but we'll get those here in a second. There's static ones, which are behind a wall. There's a garrison and a fortification. The fortifications have two sides, and so do the garrisons. All of these are double-sided, and they flip to a weaker side. Again, we'll get, well, those ones don't. So if it flips and there's nothing on the backside, there's no strength, they only have one side to them, so bear that in mind. But all the infantry units have two sides. And there's cannons, which obviously I don't know how cannons out, but it's cannons as well. But what you would do, you just say, "Oop, I want to resolve this combat." You put out your guys, and it's interesting the way that this works. The French always set up first, so you'll always be putting your dudes out. If you've got your little Napoleon counter, he doesn't fight in the combat, but there's a little holding box for him, and he's gonna help you with your commands, and we'll get there here in a second. But basically, each of these boxes, these big stripes, can hold a certain amount of people. The approach box can hold 4, and the front can hold 6. And so you start with putting your dudes out. So, let's say, and I think, let's see, I've got that. So the garrison's going to go out, the fortification. We'll put these back here. These are static, so you have to remember where you put those, they will never move. So I'm going to put these guys out, and you either have them in a line formation or a column formation. They'll march better this way they'll attack better. And it's honestly, I don't know if other games do this. I thought this was so cool. It was so simple, a really easy way to do that, but it gave you this great feeling of marching your troops, and then you fan out into line formation, and you do these huge attacks with your rifles and muskets. Oh, so cool. I had a blast doing that. But so I'm going to put my guys in a marching formation, and these guys, they have a kind of a way of doing it. You put them out in column typically, and you try and fill up the approach box first before putting them in reserves. And I think you try and put your better quality troops up first, so they'll fight better. But that's it. So you kind of set this up. What you'll then do is, and there's a player right here, we'll kind of map this out. There's a lot of different stuff here. So you've got this little play aid card that tells you kind of everything that they're going to do. You roll for like a fog of war event, and the fog of war is really cool. So it gives you a special event that's going to happen. Let's roll a dice. Oops. And we rolled a 9. And that can be modified if you spend supply points. So you roll a 9, you inflict 1 hit on your forces in 1 random French-occupied city. So you have to go over the campaign board and inflict a wound on someone. And you would do this before you set your forces up, but I just kind of did it the other way around. So I've got to inflict a wound on someone. Well, this guy's in Milan. I just have to wound him. Great, that sucked. That wasn't good. But after you roll, you can spend these points to add to your rolls to try and bypass some bad things. And there's some things you can do with that. Or there are these scout tokens, and you can purchase these with your supply points. The supply points are just set by the campaign. You start with 3, you'll gain 3 every turn for every city you control, that kind of thing. So you'll want to spend them, there's no point in holding them over. But you buy some scouts, a scout gives you a reroll on that Fog of War roll, for example. Or these can be used to reroll the enemy AI or what they're going to do as well. If you kind of hate what they're doing, you can force them to reroll with those scouts. So it's a little bit of power in there. Those are really good. But you do that, and then you check if you have 3-to-1 odds, or if they have 3-to-1 odds against you, you basically just destroy them all. You don't even fight, because the odds are so overwhelming that they all surrender and basically die. You just remove them and you auto-win. So again, speeds up the game if you can break up their forces and plan really well, or kind of catch people off guard. That helps too. And then we get to kind of the battle plans, and this is the really neat part. You command your forces using these special tokens, and I'll kind of grab a bunch here. So these are the French battle plans, and on the back of them it has a very specific order. And you can leaf through these and you choose what you're going to do. So this one is a flank. So if you chose this order, you literally put this on one of your units on the board. You can only do 2 of them. If you're in a column, you don't need to roll a dice to activate it. Typically you would have to. You're going to advance once, advance a second time, and force them to do a shock at -3, and then do an attack. This is very, very powerful. You'll kind of charge up the board, trying to rout people and do a big attack. So that's great. If you don't, there are these generic ones printed on the board, which just do a normal attack. March 1 space. Turn from column to line. You don't have to waste your time doing that. That slows down your progression. But you will have to, because you get battle plans equal to the value of Napoleon if he's in the combat. So this guy's a 2. It's early on in his career. You get 2 of these, of the special ones, and everything else is going to be a generic one. So you can do some things, but not everything. Really, really fun. If you don't have that Napoleon there, the campaign has a set number that you get, and it was 1 in this campaign. So very, very different kind of feel when you've got one thing you can do, and everything else is fairly plodding, you feel. But what I would do is, I'm going to choose these. Let's say I've got a flank. I'm going to put him on my cavalry. So my cavalry is going to kind of charge, do some attacking. It's going to be really fun. And I've got a second one that I can choose. Well, let's do... almost not... When you're this far behind, it's not terrible. Okay, so we'll do... Oh, let's try. Here's what we'll do. There is actually a charge one here, which is only for cavalry. So we'll put that in the cavalry, and then we'll put the flank on one of our line infantry. We'll put it on this guy, because he's got a 7 attack value. So he has to roll a 7 or less on a d10. Pretty good odds those guys are going to go in and do some damage. So you assign all of your stuff, and we'll say these 2 dudes are going to do the generic march action. So we'll just kind of remember that we're doing that. And there's not really, it's meaningless how they set up and how they look, but I like to set them up how I feel like the battlefield should lay out. So I've got my charging cavalry coming in, doing a flanking maneuver, and we'll have line of infantry, and suddenly I get can't. Oh, it's so cool. I like playing around with this and having fun with it. But that's just for me. It is just kind of a region though, so it doesn't necessarily matter. For the enemy, they have a series of these battle plans that are different, and you would randomly choose from an opaque container, which might not necessarily random, but we'll do it anyway. So they get 2, so they picked Wedge, and they picked, what is this one? Rush. So this one, they're going to change to column formation, they're going to advance, and they're going to attack. If rushes, if they're a column, you don't roll to activate it. If it's a cavalry, they advance. Cavalry advance, shock 3, advance, shock 3. So, I mean, these are very, very good. So we're actually, and these, you don't choose who these go on unless there's a decision to be made. But what you do is you assign them to the best quality troops. And what that means is, and these ones have 2 different qualities in this particular battle. You have an L for line and P for poor line. So these are worse. So my cavalry that has an L, he's going to get the rush one. And then from here, everyone's P. I'm going to go with the highest activation value. And then between these two, it's a toss-up. I get to choose. You can either choose, which is more beneficial for you, or you can roll a dice. Odds and evens, I'll put it on the evens guy. But that's kind of up to you. It says you get to choose. Well, typically I like to choose the one that is the strongest for them, just to make it harder for myself. You don't want to have a cakewalk. There's that phrase again. And then you just resolve them. So this guy's going to rush. If it's a column, you don't roll. Normally you would roll, and if you're going to roll, this is their combat value down here. If they roll a 7 or less, they do 1 damage. If they do a 4 or less, they do 2 damage. Cavalry can be very devastating. But you have to do this 7. You have to roll a 7 or less to even activate this order. However, this one says don't do it because they're in column formation. So the cavalry are going to advance. Boop. They would do a shock check at -3, and that's as simple as if there was any of my units here, the weakest one is going to roll to see if they break and retreat. And they would do so with a -3 value, so it'd be very easy for them to break. Then they're going to advance again, and then they switch to column. They're already in column, so we don't have to worry about it. So that's what they do. That's all they do. That's it. This is gone. We just put this back in the bag. Wedge, same thing. So we have to roll to activate this. They have a 6 value. Let's roll the dice. They rolled a 2. We rolled less than their value, so they're good. If you roll a 7, 8, 9, 10, no good. They literally don't do anything. The orders don't get to them. So he's going to advance. He's going to attack. You can attack in your region, in melee, or the adjacent one. There's no one to attack, so they don't do anything. And I think 0 to 1 they do a line. I'm not sure what that means, but I think they might switch to do line based on something else, which means they would switch their formation. These 2 dudes just do advance. If column, we don't roll, so he's gonna march. He's gonna march. That's all they do. So that's it. That's their movements. Then I do all of my ones in any order that I want. So these guys are going to flank. Yeah, we'll do these ones first. Sure, why not? So they advance. Anytime you advance into melee, you always do a shock check. This one has no negatives or bonuses, so we're just trying to roll. You kind of roll for them. So as the French, I want to roll high, because really it's the AI rolling the dice. Yeah, and they rolled less than their value here, which is a 7. So they don't route, they don't move or anything like that. So that's good for them. Now, in this particular case, I believe they don't advance again, because you can't advance any more than you have when you're in melee like this. So they skip the second advance, and then they just do an attack. And an attack is as simple as, I try to roll under my attack value, which is a 7. I roll a 5. He's going to flip over. He's the only one there, so he has to take the hit. Normally, if I was here, you assign the hit to the weakest possible formation. So that would be this one. He's poor line, and his attack value is a 3. He's like the weakest one, and his inactivation value is worse than this one, so I think it'll be him. He would take that hit out of all of these 4. But in this situation, we inflict a wound on the cavalry. Excellent. He's done. Let's see. These two dudes are just going to march. That's all they do. And then this guy, he's going to do his charge. So he's going to advance. And again, because he's now in melee with this guy... Oh, well, let's check that. Let's see. Because when these guys advance, he has to do a check. Let's do that. I should do this correctly. So, as soon as he moves in, this guy has to do a shock check. Oh, he's dead. Sorry. When I flipped him over to his weak side, I forgot. He doesn't have any combat values or any activation values on him. He's a single-step unit. He died. That's great. So yeah, these two dudes, these two formations just march up in column. So yeah, then this guy will. We have to activate him. He's a 6. So to activate, we have to roll a 6 or less. Which I did, thankfully. Otherwise that would have been bad. I know I didn't do that for him, but whatever. So he's going to advance. And then he advances again. So then the weakest one, which is now him, he has to do a shock check at -3. And his value is I think it's his attack value. Let's just check real quick. I don't want to give you the wrong rules. Combat value or less. So his printed combat value is a 3. And he's rolling this dice at -3. And that's just because it's a cavalry charge and he's a weak unit. So he's going to roll the dice. He rolled a 4, -3 is a 1. So he's going to break. He takes a hit and he goes back. That's devastating. And then, because that was just his first advance, he doesn't do the second one because he's now in melee, but he still doesn't attack. So he's still going to attack this guy again. So he's going to do it. He's going to attack at a 5. Oh, I had these in the wrong ones. And I rolled a 9. That's way bigger than his combat value, so he misses. Not great. But that's it. And you'll just do that over and over again. But you only have usually 3 or 4 turns in the combat to do that. And that was the one thing that I thought was really fun, is that during that Fog of War roll, remember we rolled a 9? That means we only have 3 combat turns, which means you have to charge in and kill them quickly. Some of the battles, if you roll 10, you got 5 turns to do it. Some of them, you got 2 turns to do it. So you have to really get in, do hit and runs, go all in. And that's a fascinating little kind of part of the game too. What you would do at this stage, once everyone's activated, you would then do another route check. Similarly to what you did before combat, you check for that 3-to-1 ratio of combat values. So you got 5, 13, 20, 26, and they have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 3 9s is 27. We don't route them. We were really close to doing it. If this attack had succeeded, and we could have flipped a guy, we would have flipped this one. We would have had 3 times the amount. The combat's immediately over at all these, so they rout. And basically, you turn off this combat timer at that point, and then all these dudes just retreat off the board. That's all they do. So you do more combat rounds. You don't count them for kind of the winning and withdrawing. You've already routed them. Then basically, all of their turns, they're just going to move off. So you have to chase them down and kill them as many as before they get off the board. So then you start getting into really cool things like this. You have this prepare battle roll here, which is, there's no roll. You put this on top of battle plan and resolve it before the enemy, because the enemy will always resolve first. So they're always going to run away from you. So you have to jump on them early and charge and bring everyone up. Fantastic. This is really, really fun tactical combat. The strategic game is really cool. But that's everything. I mean, it's not everything. There's a ton more here, and I probably kind of butchered some of the rules there. But this is a fun game, and there's a lot of different pieces here. So what we'll do is we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So that was a look, kind of at a bit of everything. I can't show everything just because there's almost too much to kind of do a rules video on. But just so you can get a kind of an understanding of what it is. Had a blast playing this. And I will be playing this quite a lot. And that's something that I have found with a lot of the DVG games. You know, I've played a fair number of the Leader series. I've played Phantom Leader Deluxe and Thunderbolt Apache Leader, those style games. And those are, I feel, a little bit quicker. You know, you can put together a little force,
you can do a mission. It resolves quickly. Yeah, it takes about 20 to 30 minutes. So that but like you play one, you want to play again, you want to play again, you want to play again. In Field Commander Napoleon, the campaign's going to take you a little bit longer, just because it's a full campaign. So in that way, you get actually, I feel, a bit more meat out of it. Seeing your tactics and your overall strategy play out on a strategic level board, I think is really neat. And then you've got the tactical combats, which again, those don't take long. So it's the same way to that leader series where it's fight. Do a bit of stuff here, fight, do stuff, fights, do stuff. Now they attack back, and it's this little back and forth thing. You get that feeling in a similar way, but this gives you, I feel, a bit more. And I say that because it has a full strategic board. It looks great, and it's a bit more. It's a bit more in depth than some of the abstract zones that you would get in Thunderbolt Apache Leader, where it's just kind of like the enemy forces up there moving towards you, but it's kind of abstract on a little series of bars. This is a bit more, like I said, bit more meaty, a bit more involved. Yeah, this isn't going to be the most detailed and complex simulation of Napoleonic warfare. If you're looking for that, look elsewhere. But if you're looking for an excellent solitaire game, this is that. This is a great solitaire game. It reminds me a lot of playing old kind of real-time strategy games, or even the turn-based ones. So there's actually, what's it called? I think it's Napoleon Total War. So it's a video game from probably about, I don't know if it's 10 years old now. Or even things like Age of Empires, or even the Civilization style games. You get a bit of that feel where you're moving on this strategic board, then you're resolving the combat, and it's deploy your forces, they're going to deploy theirs, and then you do this combat, and it's trying to move up your lines, trying to keep your lines together so you don't just get obliterated as you move a couple forward, and the ones in the back are just not doing anything. So I get a lot of feel from that old video game that I used to, again, it's not old, but that video game that I used to play. And that's great. That's really what I was looking for in a game where I could do that with some tactile pieces and it still feel as good as that old video game used to play, because I played that more than I'd like to admit. This gives me that. I had a blast playing this. Like I said, be playing this again, and I will play all the way through this box. And based on how I feel about this series, how simple it is, how this works, I'll be looking into other of the Field Commander series as well, just to see. So if you've got any kind of thoughts on any of the other games, let me know in the comments, because I'm always interested to hear what you guys have to say. But if you're interested, this is available. I don't know if it's on their website still. I don't know if it's kind of in print right now, but I picked mine up secondhand at Gen Con. You can get them online, various different websites. This gets a big thumbs up from me because I'm always down for a good solitaire. And this is a topic I don't have in my collection, and I think this is an extremely good one. So, this has been Field Commander Napoleon from Dan Verson Games, and I've been Alexander from theplayers8.com. Thank you very much for watching.